Welcome to our PowerPoint presentation. My name is Matt Martin. My colleague is Dr. Ellen Goodboy. We are professors of communication studies at West Virginia University. Both of us have investigated aggressive communication in numerous contexts, whether it be the workplace, the classroom, or other types of interpersonal relationships. In this PowerPoint presentation, we are going to review some research that looks at bullying in the workplace. In the next two slides, you will read definitions of bullying in the workplace from other researchers. We will then discuss a little bit more closely what makes a given behavior or set of behaviors bullying. How can we classify someone as a bully? When you look at these definitions, there are several issues that appear, and these are issues that scholars that study aggressive negative behavior in the workplace often mention. Frequency. How often does it happen? To be considered bullying, they often say it has to happen 2 times a week. They also argue that it has to be persistent, over time. Now, a given behavior can be very negative, very hurtful, very bully-like. But scholars, for the most part, do not consider that bullying behavior. A negative outburst in and of itself is not considered bullying behavior. These bullying behaviors must happen frequently, and they must take place over time. Some argue that they need to escalate, that they need to get higher intensity, that they need to increase in intensity, that the behaviors need to become more hurtful, more negative. Hostility. Does the source intend to hurt the target? This could be physically, mentally, or the person's position in the organization, possibly hurting that person's productivity. Are these behaviors intentional? And then we also have the issue of power imbalance. This is perceived. It does not have to be in the organizational structure. Someone who is higher in the organization can be bullied. This person is not popular. They're not part of the in crowd. It is possible that one subordinates gather together and bully the supervisor. Now, with all of these variables, there is some controversy. Some would argue, and even I would argue, that possibly you don't need 6 months of negative behaviors for it to be considered bullying. And possibly the behaviors do not have to escalate. They just continue on. It's always interesting from a communication perspective to look at the intentionality of the source. Now, does it really matter whether the source intends to be a bully or not? The negative consequences still happen. Now, that's just one issue to consider when we're trying to classify these behaviors or certain behaviors in the workplace as bullying. When people think about bullying in the workplace, they might think first of bosses being bullies to their employees. But that's only one relationship where these bullying behaviors can take place. And can a boss be a bully? Well, definitely. The boss has that position of authority, some legitimate authority in the organization, and that individual can be a bully to one's subordinates. But it is also possible for a subordinate or an employee to be a bully to the supervisor. Other relationships would be certain coworkers being bullies to other coworkers, or customers and clients bullying an employee. In certain organizations you hear the phrase, the customer is always right. Well, that customer could be not a nice person. That customer or that client can be a bully, and they can hurt the employee. They could hurt that individual mentally, but potentially also physically, and also definitely as far as their job. In this study, researchers looked at how bullies and their targets can be viewed using metaphors. As you look at the words described here, none of it is attractive. Yes, of course, the bully often is viewed negatively, especially by the target. A type of dictator, someone that believes they can do whatever they want, someone that believes that they have a lot of power, a mandate to forge ahead, any means necessary. Also viewed many times as being two-faced, as being hypocritical, smiling to your face and then stabbing you in the back or laughing behind you. In communication at times people study what's called indirect verbal aggression. While verbal aggression are messages sent to you, indirect verbal aggression is when people talk behind your back, making fun of you, ridiculing you. And a lot of these behaviors are bullying behaviors. And bullies are also perceived as devils, just evil. The idea that these bullies live to torture their targets. While bullies are viewed negatively, so are the targets at times. The targets are not always perceived as a nice individual who is being victimized. They might be perceived as being a child, helpless, innocent, unskilled. They might be viewed as a slave or a prisoner, a relative minority in the organization, someone that has limited role, limited responsibilities, limited rights. Perceived as an animal, something not human, something that is not equal to the rest of the organization. So while bullies are viewed negatively, just as often, targets are often viewed negatively by some individuals. Who is more likely to be a bully? Males. Males are more likely to be bullies than females. When people are in high-stress jobs, they're more likely to be bullies as well. How about those that have been bullied in the past? Research shows that if you've been bullied in the past, you're more likely to be a bully in the future. When there's job insecurity, when an individual has uncertainty about what is going on in the workplace, they are more likely to bully. It is almost a survival of the fittest behavior. People who have supervisors who are bullies tend to be bullies themselves. Now remember, this is not an absolute. This does not mean that if you had a bully for a supervisor, you're going to be a bully. I've had bullies for supervisors in the past. One of my jobs as a bill collector involved basically not being nice to people. And my supervisor tried to get us in the appropriate mood by being a bully towards us. It did not work too well. This would also be an example of a culture where bullying is rewarded. One of the things that individual would tell us is, keep yelling at these individuals, tell them we're going to throw them in jail. We were rewarded for being a bully. And to tell you the truth, this was a number of years ago, but when I did this job, I sometimes would call my friends, telling them ahead of time that I would call them, and then I would yell at them, just so that my boss thought that I was yelling at a potential person who was going to pay their bill, while in fact it was one of my friends laughing on the other side of the phone. A final aspect of bullies is people who lack interpersonal skills, people who don't know better. Going back to verbal aggression, when we talk about verbal aggression, one of the variables that both Dr. Goodboy and I study quite a bit, people often are verbally aggressive because they do not know how to argue. They do not know how to use a rational argument. Similarly, a person gets frustrated in the workplace, a person does not know how to appropriately express their thoughts, and they turn to these bully-like behaviors. None of this condones the behavior. These are just some examples of who is likely to be a bully. The organization plays a role in how much bullying takes place within that organization. Look at the leadership. Are the leaders bullies? Possibly, if you have a leader who is authoritative, dictator-like, believes that they are always right, they believe they do not need to be held accountable to anyone, this person might be a bully. If you have a passive leader, it's not that the passive leader will be a bully, but the employees might believe we can act like bullies and there will not be any consequences. We can do whatever we want. Some organizations, by their nature, are going to be more negative. It's a bad work environment. Possibly it's very competitive, it can be abusive, just not a nice place to be. Certain healthcare professions are recognized as dealing with more of this hostility. Healthcare and hospitality. Here we're talking employee to employee, but also the customer or the patient often being very abusive in this environment. We can look at the organizational policies involving bullying and how you are expected to treat your coworkers and your clients and customers. The clearer the policies, the less likely bullying is going to take place. If individuals know what will not be tolerated, they are better able to follow the rules. And then there are situational factors. Not the organization itself, but events that are happening within the organization. When the organization is restructuring, when there is a lot of change taking place, or when there's job insecurity, people are more likely to demonstrate bullying behaviors. If the job is very competitive, or if there's a period where it's very competitive, individuals are more likely to be aggressive, more likely to be bullies. This is another list looking at reasons why people might be a bully in the workplace. You have disagreements, and in order to win the disagreement, you feel you have to bully the other person. I cannot win on the merits of my argument, but I can act overly aggressive and possibly win the argument. Sometimes people in a position of power in the organization abuse that power. They bully those underneath them, either to achieve goals or for their own amusement. Sometimes bullying is displaced. In other words, maybe I'm mad at my boss was very mean to me. I cannot be mean to my boss, but I can be mean to those people that work in my unit. So while I'm really angry at my boss, instead of addressing that directly with that person, I displace those feelings, and for no real good reason, I'm aggressive, unpleasant, inappropriate with my colleagues. Sometimes bullying takes place due to discriminatory reasons. Someone is different, someone looks different, someone doesn't participate with everyone else, someone kind of sticks out, they have a different point of view, and for that reason, they are bullied in the workplace. And then also the idea that some individuals feel that they've been exploited so much that they are so not part of the organization that they need the bully in order to get attention. So people demonstrate bullying behaviors because they are oppressed and exploited, and they feel that this is one way for them to state how unhappy they are. One measure that's used to look at bullying in the workplace is the Negative Acts Questionnaire Revised. This is a 22-item measure that looks at some of the negative behaviors that people do in the workplace every once in a while. Now, the authors purposely did not use the words bullying or harassment because they argued that if you ask someone, "Are you a bully?" the person is going to say no. They also believed that if you asked a target, "Have you been bullied?" that there's some type of stigma with that word, and people were less likely to admit witnessing or being on the receiving end of these behaviors. Now, in this measure, it looks at 3 different types of bullying: work-related, person-related, and physical intimidation. The next 3 slides give examples of the items used in this measure. Check out these items, and then we'll talk about a study that used this measure. When you look at the items in the questionnaire, I know that I can say that I've seen many of these destructive behaviors take place in the workplace. Now, the least common would be the physical intimidating, but I have seen individuals, supervisors, be very aggressive, scream, block doorways, finger point towards one's chest, and these behaviors are quite physically intimidating. In the study mentioned on this slide, when employees perceived the workplace of having these destructive behaviors, the employees reported more stress about their jobs and more stress about their interactions with their colleagues. And they also reported lower satisfaction, lower commitment with the organization. They viewed the workplace as relatively hostile, not a nice place to be. In the previous PowerPoint presentation, Alan Goodboy looked at cyberbullying in the school or adolescent environment. But cyberbullying also takes place in the workplace. Individuals using technology to demonstrate these negative behaviors we see here. And who is the bully? The bully can be the supervisor, but it could also be the employee bullying a coworker or bullying the boss. And the bully might also be either a client or the customer. Cyberbullying does take place in the workplace, but it is less common than face-to-face bullying. 50% of people say they have been cyberbullied at one time or another, while 10% say they are cyberbullied regularly. Now, cyberbullying, this could be not included in emails, or being made fun of in the emails or a post on the work website. Possibly unflattering pictures are posted of social events involving the organization. Now, there are numerous ways an individual could be cyberbullied without a direct threat. Research also shows that for children, cyberbullying substitutes for face-to-face bullying. In other words, one might cyberbully someone but not be a bully to that person's face. In the organization, they mostly coincide. The person who's a cyberbully is also a bully face-to-face. A person who's a bully in the hallway, during meetings, at other type of work environments, that is the individual who's most likely to be a cyberbully. The next 2 slides look at anti-bullying policies. Now, I'm focusing on the organization, but these also could be used by schools or other types of institutions to come up with their own anti-bullying policies. First, you need to be clear about what is a bullying behavior. Telling people to be nice to each other or not to be mean is too ambiguous. It allows for individuals to say there are gray areas. Be specific. One cannot do A, B, and C. These policies must be posted, available, made public. Everyone needs to be aware of what the policies are. Everyone needs to read these policies and have an understanding of the policies. If someone breaks the rules, there must be zero tolerance. There must be a punishment for breaking the rules. This requires a commitment from the organization. If a popular boss or a productive employee breaks the rules, there still needs to be consequences. We cannot have separate rules for people we like, separate rules for people we don't like. If someone is a bully, that person needs to be punished. The organization as a whole, the individuals in the organization, need to be trained about bullying and its impact. There is some evidence that shows that once people see how hurtful these messages are, they are more likely to not tolerate bullying behaviors in the workplace. If someone is a repeat offender, if a person is a bully over and over again, the consequences need to increase. The punishment needs to increase. This individual might need to be relieved of his duties or possibly even fired. The target also needs to be looked out for. If a person says, "I was bullied," the organization cannot punish that person. There needs to be some type of social support for individuals who have been bullied in the workplace. Now, one study looked at human resource departments, and what they found is that human resource departments were not always welcoming to people that made charges of being the targets of bullies. That is not to say that they tried to cover up for the organization, but they made it very difficult for a person to go on the record to say, "I was bullied." They would discourage individuals and say, "It will be difficult for you to prove this charge." So there's almost a spiral of silence taking place. So human resource departments need to not protect bullies, especially those bullies who might be high status in the organization or very productive. Organizations in general need to take a zero tolerance for this type of behavior. Here's a quote that pretty much sums up the whole presentation. Bullying is an organizational problem. Organizations, administrators must address bullying. It hurts morale, it hurts productivity, it hurts organizational commitment, and it also increases liability and the possibility of lawsuits. There is no reason to have bullying behaviors in the workplace. Thank you for participating in this presentation. The next couple of slides list the references that I used in preparing this presentation, but I also invite you to go back to the main page of Week 3, where Alan and I put together a group of internet connections, internet websites, where you can learn more about bullying in the workplace and cyberbullying. There's some great resources here. Go to these websites. There's plenty to read. There's videos to watch. A lot of helpful information about how to address bullying. Thank you.